Here's a tip for you when you come to Pensacola. The places to explore here are the real deal. Real forts, real military installations, and museums full of real stuff to interact with. Because it's authentic, it's not watered down or made to be kid-friendly. There's about a 30-foot drop from top to bottom. You can climb on this World War II relic, but from the top, it's about 15 feet straight down. Explore everything in Pensacola, but keep your wits about you and understand the naturalness that keeps it interesting also needs to keep you on your toes. Ouch! As we traveled around Pensacola, it was interesting to see the influences that various countries in power had on the area. In the original parts of town, you see a Spanish influence in names and architecture. Then the French. As you move further out, you can see more British. Go far enough, and you can even find the American influence. A spot that really shows the passage of time in this area, only in a military way, is the Pensacola Naval Air Station. It's had a huge impact on local history. Back in 1825, when only birds thought too much about flying and military action meant ships, President Adams recognized the strategic location of Pensacola Bay for his Navy. He also knew that this area was covered with pine forests. Put those two together, and it was a no-brainer that a Navy yard should be established here for shipbuilding. It was known as the Pensacola Yard or the Warrington Yard for the small town right outside of Pensacola. In the beginning, the yard dealt mainly with trying to suppress piracy and the slave trade. In 1913, when humans were really starting to question the birds' monopoly on flying, the Navy saw the military potential for airplanes and decided to establish an aviation training station here. Nowadays, this military installation is better known as the Naval Air Station. You have to visit the National Naval Aviation Museum right here on the Naval Air Station property if you want to get the whole scoop on how the Navy started to sprout wings. The man who knows that history inside and out is Captain Bob Rasmussen, the museum director. I asked him about the museum and how it got started.
Well, the museum started here in 1963. As a matter of fact, we're celebrating our 50th anniversary.
Congratulations.
And really just on a shoestring, just a very small building. It wouldn't even hold one airplane.
You can say that again. The first building was the size of a 2-bedroom house, and the only airplane it had set out in the front yard. Just like naval aviation itself, from those humble beginnings, it grew into what it is today.
Eventually, we grew into what we have right now, which is about 360,000 square feet of exhibit space and over 160 airplanes here inside the building and another 50 outside.
I noticed going through the museum that in the beginning, most naval aviation was to land a boat, basically.
That's absolutely correct. You will see that the early aircraft that we flew in the Navy all had floats or were built on boat hulls with wings.
Mm-hmm.
And as a matter of fact, until World War I, essentially all of the aircraft that we had met those criteria that they could both fly and operate off the water.
The museum has several of those earliest float planes on display, like the Tommy. After you landed this single-engine tail dragger in the water, a couple of guys had to get it up on shore. It took a little more muscle to maneuver this one around, but it had a much bigger influence on aviation history, too.
We have the first aircraft ever to cross the Atlantic Ocean, which was in 1919, and that's an NC-4, a Navy flying boat that made the cross in several days with a crew of 3.
Now, the NC-4 seems big. It's got a 115-foot wingspan, but for those 3 guys, it must have been as scary as going to the moon for the first time. As the Navy was getting more and more comfortable with aviation as a whole, they were becoming less and less worried about having floats attached to their planes. That's because they found the best way to operate airplanes at sea was to create a portable landing strip that could go anywhere in the world there happened to be a need to operate those planes. Today, we refer to that portable landing strip as an aircraft carrier.
We made our first landing aboard a ship. It was not an aircraft carrier, but it was configured to accommodate one of these early aircraft. It was made out of wood and fabric, basically.
That first landing in January of 1911 was on the USS Pennsylvania, an armored cruiser that had a special platform for the landing built on her afterdeck. Only a few months before that, in the fall of 1910, the first airplane took off from a ship, the USS Birmingham. It took off from a wooden platform attached to the ship's bow. Those two experiments proved to a lot of naysayers that it could be done. Airplanes could land and take off from ships at sea.
The carrier came into its own in World War II, really, when we learned actually from the Japanese how effective and important the aircraft carrier was.
War always stirs up development. The U.S. kicked it into high gear and started building and improving the carrier aviation program.
We only had 8 or 9 aircraft carriers going into World War II, and half of those were sunk in the first 5 or 6 months of the war. And so we went into a major production program, ended up the war with over 100 aircraft carriers.
Not only did the nation build more carriers, World War II brought huge improvements in military aircraft, too. We went into the war with biplanes and tail draggers, and ended the war with jets being sent to sea. The whole evolution of carrier technology, from converted ships to the latest nuclear-powered Nimitz class, is on display here at the museum. But it's not limited to just carriers and planes. Captain Bob made an interesting comment during our interview. I noticed also that it's not only fixed-wing aircraft, you have a lot of helicopters.
We have a lot of helicopters, which really represents the biggest segment of naval aviation now. And we have more helicopter aircraft and helicopter crews than we have a fixed-wing aircraft nowadays.
There's everything here, from the Hoverfly, the Navy's first helicopter, to Marine One, the President's main ride when he's not on Air Force One. And if you think naval aviation is just planes and helicopters, think again.
Well, the blimp program and the lighter than air is what we called it. The program in the Navy was very, very big during the 20s and 30s. We had some just huge rigid airships.
And they're all on display here at the museum. And naturally, if we go to the beginnings of aviation with balloons, we have to cover more recent advancements. The space program, it's here too. Plus, you can see what it's like to land on a carrier or steer an aircraft carrier. See what life was like at home during World War II. Or, better yet, what life was like on a typical World War II carrier. Be immersed in the first-hand stories of naval aviators. If you're more into Hollywood and the world of entertainment, see how comedian and movie star Bob Hope helped to get a wounded nation through it all with just a little bit of laughter. Before interviewing Bob, I assumed that he was just like most museum directors. He had a deep knowledge of the subject matter and wanted to pass that knowledge on to museum visitors. Boy, was I in for a shock. One mention of his name around Pensacola, and you learn that he's a lot more than just the guy who holds the keys to a museum. He's also an accomplished pianist and artist. The watercolors upstairs, they're Captain Bob's. The artwork that greets you at the Apollo display, it's from Bob. The statues that stand in front of the museum, Bob's, and the statue in the foyer. The statues at the Veterans Memorial in downtown Pensacola, Bob's. Even the statue of De Luna, the man who first settled the area down at the port, done by Bob. And there's one more thing about Captain Bob. A little birdie told me that you used to be a Blue Angels pilot.
Yeah, long time ago, Jim.
Bob's a little shy about it, but there he is back in 1956. The Blue Angels are based here in Pensacola, and you see them practicing all the time. It was back in 1946, right after World War II, when Admiral Chester Nimitz ordered the formation of a flight demonstration team to help with recruiting and public relations. They started out flying Grumman Hellcats, carrier-based single-engine prop planes, and there were only 4 of them. Back then, they went by their official name, the U.S. Navy Flight Demonstration Squadron. Not very catchy when one of your goals is to help with marketing. Plus, it was a lot of words to paint on the side of those little planes. Maybe that's why when one of the pilots read about New York City's Blue Angels nightclub and mentioned it to the team, they jumped on it, and that's how we've identified the team ever since. Today, they average 70 shows and 11 million spectators a year during their March to November season. During the winter months, the team heads to California. But just like proud parents, all the locals will remind you that the Blues home base is right here in Pensacola. And the best place to explore Blue Angels history is right here at the National Naval Aviation Museum. Okay, let's figure it up. We've got beautiful weather, beautiful beaches. We've got the oldest European settlement in the entire continental United States. We've got the National Naval Aviation Museum and the Blue Angels. What's not to like about Pensacola, Florida? You've got to try it out. Hey, till next time, I'm Jim Barnett. Gotta go.
If you have a destination idea for Jim or you want to check out other episodes of Jim Barnett's Gotta Go, head to jimbarnett.tv.
I love to travel, but there's no place like home. Hello, Peoria.